A few drops of tears from her eyes caused ripples in the stream water. But little did she know that her tears and the ripples stirred up an adverse effect of great magnitude. Thunder cracked across the sky and the stream water rose up high in a turmoil, overflowing everywhere. A generational phenomenon that some generations of human have come and gone without experiencing. The land must be cleansed, and the Salvation Army, delegated to the mountain for redemption, must be back before sunset. The early morning sun filtered gently through the palm trees of the village of Mta, casting a golden glow from the far mountain top, through the narrow path leading to the communal stream. It was a usual weekend on a Saturday, some women with tied wrappers covering their bare-chested children splashing about, and young girls huddled on the rocks washing clothes, giggling with their feet in the water. Some women were seen bathing their children under the tree by the stream which demarcated two neighboring villages but bonded them by means of one source of water. Prince Daniel, the only son of Orborn Econom, walked with his guards. His white royalty native attire floating lightly with each step. Though young, his reputation as a proud entitled heir stretched across the entire district and everywhere he went. He walked past the stream that faithful morning, and his presence at the stream stirred whispers, admiration and exaggerated respects. Prince Daniel is here, he must be scouting again. Some young girls adjusted their outfits to match their gullible intentions, while some just greeted with extended endless smiles. The women lowered their heads in respect. But not Enner. Enner was not from Ta. She was from Ekortoken, the neighboring village that shared the stream. Her presence was striking, dark glowing-skinned, tall, and graceful, with hauntingly beautiful eyes. She was bent at the edge of the stream, rinsing her wrapper when she felt his eyes on her. She consciously gazed herself to be sure that she was decently and properly covered without looking around. "Hey! You!" Daniel beckoned with a curled finger, but Enner simply looked at him briefly, and then she looked away, returning to her task at hand. She wasn't rude but simply chose to ignore his arrogance while other girls became attentive, looking with jealousy and envy. It was the first time a girl had ignored him, and it was the first time that he had stepped out of his boundaries. Daniel was stunned and intrigued because he thought she fell under her father's jurisdiction. "Who is that girl?" he asked one of his guards, who in turn asked around and discovered that she was not from around. "She's not from here, she is from Ekortoken side. I think her name is Enner." Daniel's frown slowly faded into a smile of understanding. But he became resolute. "Then she will be mine," he said calmly with a convincing smile. "Her beauty is charming and she means the world to me." The following days saw Daniel return to the stream again and again. Each time, he would greet her and made sure that warm smile and any form of kind gesture accompanied the smile. The women of the village became viral with gossip. Young girls of Ekortoken followed Enner to the stream to capture the events with their own eyes, giggling with blushes and bagging fat tales to take home. Each time, Enner would resist, and Daniel, whose ego had been challenged and long defeated, was already submitting to a genuine feeling that was growing in him. And Enner, though skeptical of princes and their promises, began to soften. Daniel's persistence began to pay off. He spoke softly and brought her gifts, making her feel royal. Daniel was humbled by love and chasing after Enner like his only chores. He sat beside her one evening at the stream's edge, causing stares and stories that were more interesting than gossips. "I can give you the world, Enner," he whispered one day, touching her fingers. "You are a prince," she replied. "I am just an ordinary girl with no parent left alive. I am just living with my auntie and surviving with a poorly nutritioned square meal a day. I am just managing to survive, and I do the best I can to avoid troubles and problems in my life. And yet, you walk on my heart like a queen." He responded lustfully. "All of that, I will provide, and all of my world, you can have," he promised. They began to meet in secret to avoid all the unnecessary attentions, sometimes under the moonlight behind her aunt's compound, other times by the rocks at the quieter end of the stream. She was shy, innocent, and became deeply in love. His father had already heard about everything and had insisted that he brought her home, but the shy, humble Enner was reluctant. Daniel pleaded and made promises, and she promised to create time and follow him to the house. One rainy evening, they found shelter under a bamboo grove at the far corner of the stream. It was there he took her innocence. She trembled in his arms, and he held her, promising, "When the time is right, I will marry you. My father will approve, and like I told you, he is eager to see you. I know that you are worried about what to say, but don't be scared, just leave all of those to me." Enner believed him. She opened up and gave him everything and started becoming very frequent in their village palace after the introduction to his father went smoothly. She was received like a soon-to-be daughter-in-law. But 5 months later, Daniel left for the city without warning, and Enner was still a welcomed member of the family and protected by the palace guards. Enner only succeeded in talking to Daniel once, after a year of his departure, through his father's phone because she did not have a cell phone of her own, nor any means of communication. 2 years passed and Enner had become less frequent in the king's palace of Nta. She wasn't sad and she wasn't angry, she was just wondering, while she waited with her tested patience. It gradually began to seem as if she was not going to see her beloved Daniel again, her first and only love ever. Her heart began to harden. And just as she feared, she never saw Daniel again. No messages, no gifts, just silence. Her aunt, Eka Inyane, a spiritual woman who often spoke in riddles, warned her. "You gave him something you can never take back. The stream and your people never forgets betrayal." Enner buried herself in quietness and condemned to constant thinking. There was no warning against all that had happened, except for her initial intuition. She started accepting her fate in gradual measures. On one market day, while she was on her way to the farm, she started hearing distant drums beat from the palace square. Her interest was pulled to the drumming, and the more she tried to ignore, the more she got curious. At some point, she stopped walking and listened, but she dismissed it. When she got to the farm, she noticed that she couldn't do anything but weakened by curiosity over what was happening. Ordinarily, she was not the type of person that invests her interest on occasions that did not concern her, but this particular one got her soaked into it completely. She succumbed to her instinct and showed up at the palace of Nta. Prince Daniel had returned. Looking polished and handsome with great smiles, radiating all over him. Enner's heart leapt with joy the moment she sighted him. She quickened her steps, but on getting close to the terrace of the palace, she noticed a radiantly gorgeous, beautiful city girl, sitting beside Daniel, smiling happily while Daniel spoke to his father, and one of his hands was all over the woman. Daniel returned with a woman, she thought to herself. She stood in front of the terrace and Daniel only glanced at her once and ignored her. He continued talking to his father, introducing his fiancée. Her name was Arid, a light-skinned Lagos girl with acrylic nails, high heels that sank into the village soil, and a loud, commanding voice. She wore synthetic hair and sprayed perfume that drowned the freshness of the village air. Village elders continued to troop into the palace to pay homage. Some greeted Enner, whom they had known in the palace, but others barely answered her greeting. Orborn Econom and his son Daniel completely ignored Enner. She summoned the courage and moved closer to Daniel and told him, "Welcome back," but he barely looked at her and dismissed her with a wave of his hand, giving Arid the impression that Enner was one of the palace maids. Orborn Econom smiled as his son introduced Arid to the elders as the one I want to marry. A warm, quiet tears began to gather in her eyes, and just then, villagers too started to gather. Enner was ashamed. She walked away and stood at the corner to regain her strength. She stood at the far corner like silent ghost, watching as Daniel spoke with confidence, completely ignoring her presence, that he simply looked through her and ignored her with pride. Enner turned and walked back to her side of the stream, tears flowing steadily and gently like in a match with the stream water. But her heart strangely calm. She remembered all the promises he made to her at that particular spot at the stream before she consented and opened her heart to him. Her eyes wept, but strangely, she seemed indifferent. The sunset left her sitting by the stream at the early darkness of the night. After a while, she got down into the stream to wash her face before leaving. As she dipped her hand to scoop the water, she paused to a flashback of some bitter memories of Daniel. And a few drops of tears from her eyes caused ripples in the water. But little did she know that her tears and the ripples stirred up an adverse effect of great magnitude. That night, thunder cracked across the sky. The stream rose and overflowed. A generational phenomenon that some generations of human have come and gone without experiencing. And the first dark shadow was seen. Both villages wondered ignorantly in great bewilderment. No one knew what was happening, but some elders could tell that the experience was of great adverse effect. Daniel fell ill the following day. It started as stomach cramps but quickly degenerated into a fever. Then tremors. His skin began to dry and wrinkled. His eyes turned yellow. The village medicine man tried everything: herbs, oils, incantations. At some point, the village medicine man stopped everything he was doing and froze as if he just saw a ghost. He was gripped with fear and he ran out screaming and never came back. Daniel screamed all night that night. He muttered nonsense in his sleep that hardly came. At one point, he claimed he saw a woman in white, standing beside his bed, holding a dripping calabash. Orborn Econom sent messengers to Uyo, then to Calabar, then to Lagos. Doctors came and left, and when it was suggested that they wanted to take Daniel out of the village for test and treatment outside, ambulances and other vehicles that made any attempts were down. Meanwhile, Erit, the newly introduced fiancée, became restless. She hated the village. She cursed at servants and shouted at the guards. She was detained and barred from traveling back to Lagos on ground that she could be the cause of the problem. This place is cursed. That night she sneaked out without the notice of the guards and tried to leave for the city, but just after she succeeded in crossing the wooden bridge that led out of the village, a giant python lay in the middle of the path, unmoving. She screamed and ran back, but no one found the python when the villagers arrived. A very strong, powerful priestess was invited and she made a revelation. Erit cried to the priestess for help, and the priestess confirmed that she had nothing to do with the problem on ground and should not even be allowed to hang around. That night, Erit packed her bags and left the village. The priestess insisted that the way to the solution can only be directed by the oracle of the neighboring village of Ikortoken, and warned that Prince Daniel had just 4 days to live, before his father, the king, joins him in the great beyond. Meanwhile, Orborn Econom was already manifesting a similar symptom on his left leg, and the villagers began to weep in silence like they were mourning. The entire entrance to the palace gate was filled with weeping sympathizers from the village. With fear of the revelations from the priestess, the desperate king quickly summoned the village oracle from Ikortoken. The old man arrived at dawn, barefoot, with cowries hanging from his neck. He placed a bowl of stream water before Daniel's room and chanted incantations without talking to anyone and without answering any greeting. Then he looked at the Orborn Econom. "Your son," he said slowly, "has broken the oath of the stream." And then he vibrated energetically for about 5 seconds and stopped with a heavy breath of relief. Then he shook his head violently and shrouded his shoulders. Silence followed. "What oath?" Abong asked calmly. The oracle made a few incantations while sniffing the air around. Then he went closer to the king and sniffed the air around him too, and then he said, You were not there when he made the oath." He pointed the animal tail in his hand at the king, "But as a father, you joined him in breaking the oath." "Great oracle, I don't know about any oath, please be more specific," the king demanded with a plea. "He made an oath by the stream, and to the most honored princess of the stream. Even if the princess stayed quiet, even if she forgives, the stream doesn't forgive broken promises against their own. The oracle informed. Love promised under the stream cannot be forgotten. And the waters have tasted her tears. The girl he betrayed did not curse him, but the stream remembers. Then he moved and stood just about 1 meter away, facing the king. He promised to marry an innocent virgin. She is the most precious offspring from the great goddess of the sea. He took her virginity and promised her love and marriage. She waited. But he broke her heart for another woman. And you, my king, was in support of his broken promises, his entanglement with another woman. Just then, an honorable red-capped chief rushed into the palace to inform that lifeless bodies are lying on the ground in every corner of the village. Death has visited. The village main source of water is the stream. Everyone drinks from the stream. The stream gives life. And it is taking back life with anger, the oracle informed. Some elders and sympathizers began to leave the palace to check on their loved ones to be sure of their safety. The king swallowed hard. What must we do? My son's life is at stake. The oracle smiled and shook his head. You are not hearing me, my king. You will die next, after your son. But don't forget, the villagers are already dying as we speak. Let the boy confess. Let him find the one he wronged and let the land be cleansed. A search party of young men and elders were hurriedly sent to the village of Ecortoken to meet with Enna and appease her. Meanwhile, Eka Inyane was at her small shrine when Enna returned from the stream. She walked up to her and looked at her within the eyes with loving concern. Your path is not done, the old woman said. Your prince is suffering, and may die. He is not my prince and I do not care, Enna replied. You do, my daughter, the old woman said, and Enna simply replied, no I don't, and walked away. Just then, the delegation from the village of Enta arrived. They greeted respectfully and looked appealingly at Ainur. My dear daughter, Itakambar, the leader of the delegation said apologetically, we have wronged you grievously, and the gods are very angry with us. People are dying all over the village and the water we drink have become poisonous to the people and the livestock of the land. He cried with words of regrets and apologies along with the company of elders and young men. But Enna wasn't having it at all. She pleaded with them to stop. She tried as much as she could to convince them that she was not the cause of their problem and that she had not casted any curse on them. She even declared her forgiveness for him and promised to hold no grudge. Eka Inyana gathered the men in front of her shrine and informed them that the solution to the problem of their land was not within. They must seek pardon within the source of the stream, at the middle of Palm Hill, on the mountain of Hmong Ihiet. They must get to the mountain and leave the mountain before the sunset. There are only two approaches or ways to get to the mountain of Hmong Ihiet. Either through the dark twin forest where twins were killed or abandoned in ancient days, a very dangerous forest where nobody ever came back alive. The second alternative was through the tears of the gods, a very shallow body of water which is the most dangerous path to go through. This small shallow water can take a week to cross over, yet, it can take less than 10 minutes to cross over. The water temperature can rise up to 100 degrees Celsius and kill everybody on the water when provoked. The turbulence of this water can rise over 20 meters high when provoked, but when it is calm, the depth of the water is just about 3 feet deep. With a few sacrifices and words of incantations to appease the water goddess, it could offer a better alternative, but dangerous. After Eka Inyane had given them instructions and directed them on what to do, the delegation from the village of Mta have decided to embark on the journey to the mountain by the following morning. But the information reaching them from their village has it that more lifeless bodies are all over and the king is beginning to develop a serious fever. So they decided to proceed on the journey immediately, through the stream called the Tears of the Gods, with the intention of taking time to appease the goddess of the river before they could attempt to cross it. Within the hour, they were already standing by the river bank and all their hopes were dashed. The water was boiling with steam on the surface of the river. They spent almost an hour of sacrificing and rendering offerings and incantations to appease the goddess of the water, but to no avail. They knew that time was of the essence and decided to go back and try their luck through the dangerous twin forest. The evil forest stood tall, dark and gloomy, scaring off any incursion. Every visit is an offer of deadly intrusion. Famous in its reputation of receiving life without giving back. It is never calm, and never patient. It gives back nothing and lives out nothing. But the approaching men of the village of Enta have chosen to die trying than to stay back home and die along with the rest of their villagers. After a long moment of fearful contemplation at the entrance of the forest, they slowly forged ahead in two groups. They divided themselves into a group of two, with one group at the front and the second group at the back, about 100 meters apart. The moment the second group stepped into the forest, the scary shadows that followed them from behind forced them to run and joined up with the first group, shouting for help. The moment they were all standing together, before they could have any respite, they all started jumping up, shouting and touching their legs. They were flogged severally and severely between their knees and their feet by the invisible spirits of the forest with invisible canes. Some of the men's clothes got torn on the back and were also flogged on their backs. After a while, Itakambar screamed with pains and instructed them to keep moving. The flogging stopped as they moved. The trees behind them appeared to be walking right behind them. A giant black bat, the size of a vulture, flew overhead, crying like human with the voice of a little baby, and disappeared at the direction that they were heading. The men continued to drag one step at a time, while still nursing pains from the mysterious flogging, and their advancement was accompanied by the cries of multiple babies. Suddenly, two old men in white attire, holding wooden staff, appeared in front of them. The men moved ahead and without answering questions from the old men. This was as instructed by the Enners Auntie before they left the village. They were all covered with thick cobwebs, but as instructed, they quickly chewed the alligator pepper that they all had with them, which was still part of their instruction. They kept on moving forward and faster, no matter what happened, until they are able to cross the forest. Their trembling fears was lightened with relief the moment they found themselves at the foot of the mountain with a big relief. They wished for a good rest, but time was of the essence. They must be back before the sunset as instructed. The younger men moved ahead to make path as they started climbing the mountain. The elderly men followed. They climbed up and met three beautiful young girls in white attire that stood in their way. They stopped in front of the girls and one of them said,
"You human are so ungrateful. Our sister brought so much fortune to your village. She increased the influence of your king in your society. She made the prince able to travel and successful in his endeavor. It was our sister that made every farmer in your village to be very successful in the last 2 years."
The elders looked at each other at such revelations, confirming that their village had truly recorded fortune in recent times before the calamity. Just then, the second girl said,
All she wanted was love. For the prince to love her with sincerity.
The third girl spat viciously with great bitterness.
You people are so lucky because she is a very kind and caring princess. If it was me, I would have unleashed more pains and sorrow on you people than ordinary death. I would have personally dealt with you all before the stream takes its vengeance. She even guided you through the forest. You would have all died in the forest.
Please, we have wronged, Itakambar pleaded. We are here to. Just then, the girls disappeared at once. The confused men looked questioningly at each other and slowly decided to keep moving. They traced the source of the stream to a huge rock that was sheltered by a big umbrella tree. Just as they stood wondering what to do, there was an instant lightning that was followed by a massive body of water that was poured on them. Their cloths were soaked to their skin. A transparent figure stood before them in the shape of a crowned queen.
Your village have lost the glory that they would have had. Your farmland and your livestock could have been multiplied. But the deeds of men of your village have returned you back to where you were. As for your mission here, You have already paid your price to be here. But the leniency is because my precious princess has already forgiven. She holds no grudge. She has already asked for your pardon. Now, you must go back to her. She knows what to do. Go now."
Then she disappeared. The journey back to the village of Ecortoken was very eventful, with just one casualty as they struggled to pass through the evil forest. The forest was known to allow and receive life into the forest, but not allow any exit from the forest without its offering of life. The delegation from the village of Nta succeeded in struggling their way through, but not without a loss of life. Just one person. One of the elderly men, who couldn't run as fast as the rest of the group, was surrounded by the spirits when he fell to the ground, and eventually disappeared along with the spirits before some young men could get to him. The rest of the journey back was smooth, but with visible anxiety amongst them all. They got back to the village of Ecortoken, and the Eka Inyane received them and settled them down by her shrine. They requested to see Enner, and first of all, thank her for kindness and being on their side through their ordeal, even though she was gravely wronged by their people. But Enner was not around the house at that moment. The men decided to leave 2 men behind to wait for Enner, while the rest of them hurried back to the village with eagerness to check on their respective families. But first, they had to go straight to the palace to formally report the outcome of their mission to the king before they dispersed. Meanwhile, Enner decided to take a nap that morning after the men left. She immediately had a dream about the stream, as if the dream had invited her to take the nap. In the dream, the stream was red. A baby's cry echoed from beneath the waters, and a hand reached up to her from the deep. She watched in pity as the hand reached out to her. But just when she motioned towards the hand, to help out, she found herself in the different realm entirely, standing in a beautiful colorful flower garden with beautiful landscape. At the head of the garden was a beautiful waterfall with silver rocks on the background. A table-sized tabletop rock was floating on the base of the waterfall. A beautiful crowned queen sat on silver seat on top of the tabletop rock, giving instruction to Enner. She woke up immediately and noticed that it was still morning, and she looked so tired and quiet for a while. Then she went to the stream and sat at a quiet corner and meditated for hours. After which, she walked quietly to the palace of the village of Nta. Orborng Ekanemum was the first to see her, and he received her solemnly. "My daughter," he said humbly. "My son has wronged you. Our village seeks peace and pardon, to save us from a complete extinction. Please, my daughter." She nodded silently, and Daniel was brought out immediately, looking very weak, frail, and his body was almost nearly skeletal. When he saw her, his lips trembled, and he couldn't even steady his head from weakness to look at her. No. He tried forming the word that made for her name, but without success. Tears filled her eyes and rolled down her cheek as she walked towards him. Feeling his pains, feeling the pains of betrayal, remembering his promises, remembering the girl she used to be. And somehow, she remembered the handsome young man that he used to be. Just then, the men from the mission to the mountain arrived at the palace. They greeted the king with excitement. Their excitement was not for seeing the king, neither was it for an accomplished mission. Their excitement was because they came back to meet Enner in the palace, their last hope to fulfill their quest and make their mission accomplished. They reported their expedition in full to the king. And just as it was, they told the king how the goddess of the sea had instructed them to come over and see Princess Enner, and that she knew what to do. The king wept. He was apprehensive of the fact that remedy had come. But his tears was for something else. He wasn't greedy, and he wasn't selfish. But he wept silently for the blessings that she brought to the land, the glory that she brought to his kingdom during his reign, the fortune she brought to his family and the people of his kingdom. All of which are now lost, because of the stupidity, the mistake of his son, the only heir to his throne. And he allowed it to happen. Enner interrupted him as she calmly asked for water from the stream in a calabash, and it was quickly brought to her. She scooped the stream water from the white calabash, and spoke softly, "If the stream accepts your repentance, may it wash you clean. I relieve you from every infirmities and calamities." She made a circular movement with her fist around his head, anti-clockwise, 3 times and clockwise 3 times. A dark spirit was visibly seen leaving his body, and his entire body was immediately covered with tiny balls of sweat. She did the same thing to his father, Orborn Econom, and the same effect was immediately observed. All of a sudden, they heard the sound of heavy rainfall on the roof of the palace. The elders looked outside and discovered that there was heavy downpour of rainfall in the village, which came without signs or warning. It was believed to have been intended to cleanse the land. The king breathed a sigh of relief as the elders and people around hugged and shook hands with each other, congratulating each other for a mission accomplished. But they all did not forget to bow their heads in honor and appreciation of Enner. Her kindness and benevolence could not be measured. The veracity of her spirit of compassion and humanity obviously had nothing to do with the love she had for Daniel, but for a merciful heart that couldn't lay back and watch the evil darkness that befell her fellow human. In the days that followed, Prince Daniel recovered and became a changed person, but the village was not the same again in every ramification. He lost his shine and his status was weighed from a standpoint of bitter memories. Bereaved families that lost their family members to the dark days that he brought to the village despised the sight of him. Nobody wanted to hear his name. He lived in shame until he left the village. And for Enner, the thrilling story continues. Please subscribe to this channel for a follow-up of this story and more interesting tales. You can't afford to miss the twist, the turn of fate and the sweet happy ending. Stay tuned, and stay blessed.